Luocha's got so much going for him. Massive single target heals, AoE heals. He's one of the few imaginary characters we currently have in the game. Some solid damage for a character not specialized in dealing damage. And if we factor in his light cone and eidolons, he just becomes everything. Attack buffs, shields, debuffs. So he's looking pretty spicy. Here's what we can expect out of our coffin-wielding wandering merchant. Friend? Luocha's talent is arguably the most essential part of how his kit functions, supported by the fact that both his skill and ultimate are used to enable this ability, and his technique also sets up his talent immediately. But to better understand how this talent plays out, we have to understand his skill and ultimate first. Luocha's skill is a single target massive heal. It scales off of attack stat instead of HP, which is unlike other healers currently in the game. The scaling on this is massive, presumably since it scales off attack, which is naturally just a lower value than HP. Compared to level 60 Bailu and Natasha, whose scaling at trace level 6 is around 9 to 10% of their HP and about an extra 220 flat HP. Bailu heals for about 550 with 2 maxed out HP percent 5-star relics. Luocha's heal is about 50% of his attack plus an extra estimated about 600 flat HP. The extra flat HP healed here is already healing more than Bailu's skill. Although of course Bailu's skill also has some other effects as well. And it's not just a straight single target heal. Luocha is healing about 1,300 HP with his skill, assuming the information on his scalings that I've discovered are correct. So this massive heal is the first part of his skill. The next is an extra effect when an ally's HP becomes 50% or less. This is unclear to me whether this is a global trigger, meaning when any ally on the team falls below 50%, or if the ally that received the healing from the skill falls below 50%. If this is a global check, then this skill is a really good passive heal. Also, when this extra effect does get triggered, it costs 0 skill points. The downside to this extra effect is that it has a 2-turn cooldown. However, if it didn't, this extra effect would probably be the most broken skill in the game because it would probably make your entire team unkillable unless they got one shot. This secondary effect can become even better if Luocha regains energy whenever the extra effect gets triggered. Gaining extra energy from this additional effect would be really good for Luocha because it'll help him fire off more ultimates. Firing off more ultimate means he'll get more consistent Abyss Flower stacks, which in turn helps keep his talent online for much longer. And so speaking of Abyss Flower stacks, the final effect of this skill is that when he uses it, he will gain a stack of Abyss Flower. And again, a similar question applies here. When the extra effect gets triggered, does Luocha also gain an extra stack of Abyss Flower? If so, this extra ability is really good for him and helps keep the uptime on his talent. The final effect of this skill is unlocked by a trace, and it removes a debuff on the ally it is used on. Cleanses are incredibly important as a lot of enemies can put nasty debuffs that can absolutely destroy you. Freeze or imprisonment at the wrong time are absolute killers, or a super stacked dot that deals massive damage to you every turn and completely ruin your day. Now, since his skill scales off of attack, and in turn that means he's going to be one of the squishiest healers since we aren't building up his HP. But of course, in return, means we get better damage on our basic attacks and ultimate. Moving on to Luocha's ultimate, it's a pretty standard AoE damage attack. It costs 100 energy and deals imaginary damage based off of his attack stat. Using it also gives Luocha 1 stack of Abyss Flower in order to help get our talent online. The ultimate also removes 1 buff from all enemies. Removing a buff is better than most people give it credit for, mainly because I see people citing that boss buffs can't be removed, which is true. However, it's great against this specific sphere enemy and also the Mara struck soldiers. Dispelling attack buffs and a rebirth buff definitely has some value. It's a pretty solid yet simple ultimate. The only thing I'm disappointed in is the fact that the animation is not Luocha swinging his giant coffin at his enemies while screaming,
"In this behemoth typhoon, in 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 this behemoth typhoon."
Luocha's talent is a heal that gets triggered whenever an ally attacks the enemy. It requires 2 stacks of Abyss Flower, and when he reaches that, he'll deploy it immediately. It will last 2 turns, and whenever Luocha gets knocked down, it will go away. Since this field lasts 2 turns, if you want your party to get as much healing as possible from the field, you'll want Luocha to be the slowest member on the team so that the rest of the party can attack as much as possible before the field disappears. As a support character, speed is important to build up skill points, so if it means making Luocha too slow, you might want to reconsider and accept the fact that you won't be taking full advantage of the field's healing, which is fine since healing is something you do in reaction to taking damage, so you don't need to be healing all of the time. There are definitely times when the enemy doesn't deal a ton of damage to you, and instead they're just setting up for their big damage attacks. Now, in terms of how much this field actually heals, it's more in line with our current healers. Scaling is about 15% of his attack at Trace level 6, and around an extra 180 flat HP. So we're healing about 450 with 2 maxed out attack percent relics and nothing more. After you've unlocked his Ascension 4 Trace, this heal becomes an AoE heal with a potency of about 50% of the heal that I just mentioned. Also, as I just mentioned before, in order to try and get maximum value out of the healing field, utilizing follow-up attacks, speed, and damaging ultimates allows you to attack multiple times before the 2 turns are over. Trying to get the most out of this healing is important because it doesn't have a very high uptime, unless Luocha is consuming a lot of skill points, which as a support character, we kind of don't want him to be competing with our damage dealers for them. So if we take a practical example, at the start of battle in the Forgotten Hall or Memory of Chaos, the first rotation is going to take just 1 skill and 1 basic attack since we start off with 50% energy. This will instantly get our healing field online. However, after that, and assuming we have 0 extra energy recharge, after Luocha takes 4 actions, we are sitting at 95 energy, which is just 5 short of casting our ultimate. Now, of course, if we get attacked, this will put us at enough energy. In most cases, not all attacks give the same amount of energy, so that's going to vary. However, if what I mentioned before about our skill getting triggered when an ally falls below 50% gives us energy, then we should be able to cast an ultimate within 4 actions instead of 5. So as you can see with how many actions we have to take before being able to cast our ultimate and get more Abyss Flower stacks to fuel our talent, the uptime on the healing field is about 50%, maybe a little bit less. So the question becomes, is there a way to deploy his healing field within 3 actions? The only way to do this is to build enough energy recharge on him, or utilize his signature light cone. 5% energy recharge is not enough to get us to 100 energy. The first way to deploy his field without spending an extra skill point is going to take a 5-star energy recharge link rope and his signature light cone. With those 2 things combined, we get just enough to cast an ultimate. If you don't use his signature weapon, then you have to build even more energy recharge. The way to accomplish this is to use a superimposed 2 post-op conversations, giving us 10% extra energy recharge, a 5-star link rope, giving us 19.4% extra energy recharge, and then an extra 5% from the Von Wax set bonus for planar ornaments. This puts us at 34.4% energy recharge, and this allows us to get 100 energy within 3 actions. This is true according to my calculations if the 5 energy we get after casting an ultimate is affected by our energy regeneration rate. Because at 34.4% ER, after casting an ultimate, we should be at 6.72 energy. A basic attack will give us 26.88, and a skill cast will give us 40.32. Now, all of this information about energy recharge only really matters if the extra effect from his skill does not give us any extra energy. Because if it does, and it does consistently get triggered, then we should be able to cast our ultimates without needing all of this extra energy recharge. So in essence, Luocha's talent has the potential to heal a lot. However, the uptime is not so great unless we build up energy recharge, and is dependent on how his skill works, which we'll have to wait and see when he releases. Now, Luocha being an imaginary character also means he has access to slows on weakness break and delaying actions by at least 30%. At Ascension 6 as well, he gets a large crowd control resist buff. High resist to CC means you won't be getting frozen or imprisoned very often, which is good so that you can do your actions and generate energy to further keep your talent engine online. His signature light cone is also pretty damn good. It just gives Luocha more attack, gives the team extra speed, and gives Luocha some pretty decent energy regeneration. The light cone, however, isn't generic enough for other abundance characters since it gives an attack buff instead of HP, and the energy regen is good only with an AoE attacking ultimate. His Eidolons are ridiculous. They make him literally every kind of path in the game. Preservation, Harmony, Nihility, because he can grant shields with his skill, he gives an attack buff with his talent, and his ultimate now debuffs resistance. However, Luocha does have weaknesses. He has no on-demand interrupting AoE heal, and the AoE heal he does have can't be finely controlled, since it automatically deploys as you use skills and will then have a downtime until you can build up those 2 stacks of Abyss Flower again. On-demand heals are also pretty important in certain situations. Many bosses take extra actions and are able to kill off a character if you are unable to sneak in an emergency heal in between their attacks. With that said, if you don't have 2 healers and you want to clear the Memory of Chaos like right now or relatively soon, you're gonna need him. Or if you plan on pulling for Blade, you might seriously want to consider pulling for Luocha. Their abilities synergize incredibly well. If Memory of Chaos isn't your goal till maybe like months down the line, then you probably don't need Luchador. It's entirely possible to beat Memory of Chaos with heavily invested units. It is also rumored that we may be getting a free 4-star healer in the near future, so this will give you your second healer for your second team in the Memory of Chaos. So pull for Landon if you want to complete the Memory of Chaos relatively soon, before our next free star healer is given to us. If you guys want this same kind of breakdown and analysis on Silverwolf, then go ahead and watch this video.